right. Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today. We just have some non-legal related themes here. Couple of things happened. Number one, somebody sent a message saying something along the lines of, I hated the introduction until I had that explanation, I think, of along the lines of jazz means freedom. And, that's what we're here for. That is exactly why we do this, and for almost no other reason. I take that back to advocate on behalf of clients. But your personal growth is, let's say, important to us. So, keeping that in mind, I think there was other comments too about people, and it was just, again, I just want to reinforce how startling it is to me for people who did not grow up in the 80s in the Milwaukee jazz scene, that you didn't grow up in the 80s in the Milwaukee jazz scene. It seems almost astonishing. Yeah, I just, again, I couldn't really imagine. So, I guess, and this is sort of a poignant story here. We've got two things going on. I would have gone to people were saying, well, let's talk about the history of jazz. And of course, I can give you a lecture on the spot on the subject. I mean, hey, who couldn't? The point is that I think it's more interesting to hear it from somebody, who I've learned it from, who could synthesize a lot more, and also the give and take. So several months back, that would have been Tony Finlayson, one of the founders of the Kothi drum troupe, and what's left of my father's band, Sonic Harvest. It was my dad and two drummers, and this was drummer number 2. But he got carjacked some months back and for sure didn't make it, and it was kind of shocking, and more than anything else, it was just an assault on the musicians, which I think hold a special place in culture and society, and certainly, like nurses and other people ought to be, in proper societies, ought to be venerated, ought to be treated like we treat cops here. That's my opinion. So, and this, by the way, this is all Ben Hitchcock Cross talking here, just so we're clear. Okay, well, no problem. I happen to have some connections with the MPS curriculum department, and I'm like, well, hey guys, why don't you just provide the contact information of MPS's Giro, and we'll go from there. Or, the jazz historian in resident, no problem. I'll take that if you don't have a professional storyteller, musician, on hand to tell the stories of the community. I mean, it seems surprising, but okay. Just put me through to your jazz historian. And, apparently no such office exists. Which then I'm like, well, but then who runs Black History? I mean, it really made no sense to me. And I guess that's part of what the whole point of this channel is, when we're talking about the 80s and we're talking about the milieu of this channel, back in those days, there was a cadre of professional employees, and I think we've discussed this again, professional artists, professional musicians, professional writers, professionals who were dedicating themselves to the children of the city of Milwaukee and taking these kind of jobs. So, for example, an art teacher at one of the high schools would be an accomplished artist who just happened to be doing this other thing because that community, giving back to the community, was important to them. And if you look all throughout the halls of the Milwaukee schools, there's just magnificent artwork everywhere, but not from recently. But, it shows what an advanced culture and society and civilization we had achieved at some point. But it's harder to point to those artifacts now. And it's not a knock on the people who are doing the job now. I think they would probably say the same thing. But then I said, okay, well, but then who gives the lectures? I mean, who teaches at the high school on the history of jazz or Black history, for example? And apparently there's no such person. And my mind is just baffled by that. I mean, they've got trauma-informed this, and they've got lobbyists that, and security guards, 1, 2, 3, out the door. But if they had more teachers, like the band leader at Minor High School, I think they would need fewer lobbyists. They would need fewer security guards, more musicians, less security guards. That's what I'm saying. And I want to make a final overarching point, because this is something I did. I mean, I go back, and where is Dr. Rogers Onig when you need him? Please, sir, I would love to interview you, especially just for compare and contrast purposes, today versus what we had when I was in middle school. But Black History Month was an event when I was in Milwaukee Public Schools. The children would walk down the hallways giving the Black Power salute. They would walk up and down the aisles doing that. There would be, the entire month of February would have special assemblies. There would be things just for the Black males to participate in, just for the Black females to participate in, just for people. There was to be all of these sort of breakout sessions that would speak to all of these different events that would make Black History Month something for everybody. Okay? And I didn't perceive any of those things as being exclusionary, because there were so many different, breakout, I guess, sessions, as I would put it. What I'm talking about is opportunities to study Black history throughout that month and through all sorts of different lenses. And I didn't experience it, but I imagine it was something for the Black males to be able to participate in discussion about Black history with just Black males. Okay, and maybe that's not how we do things today, but I thought that was of value. Okay. I also want to point out that this is something that's in keeping with the tradition, because this is what I asked, and this is what we frequently hear this justifying that what the situation is that, for example, MPS is a minority based majority district. Okay, that is to say that the majority of the students, and that was the case when I was there, are not white. Okay, so then the argument goes that, and we've discussed this here, that and we've heard this from Dr. Holliday specifically, so that's where we're pointing to this as a justification that MPS management uses to justify its existence. They will say, well, the predominantly not white children need to see non-white faces in authority. Very possibly. But can you explain to me non-white faces in authority, or I want to put that another way very specifically, MPS management, why, if you have achieved more Black faces, non-white faces in positions of management, why, from every person that I've talked to on this subject, there is less attention paid to the subject of Black history? Because those two things do not seem to be to jive. They don't seem to be congruous here. Okay, it doesn't make any sense to me. Make it make sense to me why there would be more black people or non-white people in positions of power at MPS today than there was 30 years ago, and that there is less attention paid today to Black History Month and the history of jazz is one thing that we're talking about than there was 30 years ago. Make that make sense, because I don't understand it. I have a quote here, though, that I do want to bring up. And if you just give me 1 second here. So this is from Dr. Saffold, who was or possibly is the head of the curriculum department at MPS. And she is reporting from Dr. Posley, saying Posley wants to know if the Martin Luther King Day essay contest is something that MPS should bother with. It should bother to do anymore. Quote, do people even care? Close quote. Now, to further quote them, we are trying to get a sense of if there is still excitement around this or, quote, just another thing we do, close quote. And that there is, and I think I misspoke earlier, I attributed that to Holiday. That's in fact Saffold speaking, recounting what Posley's telling him. And that says it all right there in my mind. Anybody from Milwaukee will know how important the MLK essay contest is to the city of Milwaukee, the month of February, the recognition of Black History Month, and as a useful educational tool. Because somebody thought that it wasn't just enough for children to take in a message, but they should also synthesize and give forth on that message and present. And why don't we enter a spirit of friendly competition and excitement throughout the entire city on that subject? And that's something for, correct me if I'm wrong, 30, 40 years, children all throughout the city. I've had to do it. Boy, did I think it was an oppression myself. But there's absolutely no question that I was made to and have therefore reflected on the question of all sorts of themes here. I'm sure community or chaos. Where do we go from here? I'm sure I could name a few others. And the fact that I can remember that, I can analyze that, what that means, what that meant to me at that time, what that means to me now in a blink of an eye, really tells you Dr. Posley and the rest of management at MPS what that experience, that educational experience means. And the fact that we could have a situation where the history of jazz is not a priority. The history of the African-American contribution to the United States is not a priority. I think it's, first of all, a violation of the curriculum laws. But I think, to put it another way, and this is something that somebody shared with me here, but just so you know, to tell, this is my bias speaking out here, and this is an actual educator telling me what's up. In many classrooms, they are just trying to make sure there is no physical violence in a 45-minute period. I'm not shitting you. I'm speaking to ground-level people regularly every day, and these are the leaders of color in our community. There is very little learning going on. It is mostly safety control. And I think that is just such a heartbreak to hear from the spirit of where we're starting here with this channel, and that's why we are focused again on we all listen to this jazz here, and we think about the fact that jazz means freedom, and one of the key things, you can't get to this point here, you can't until you've got your musical knowledge, and that is one of the reasons why we educate people, is to make them free. And that's one of the reasons why, if you want to play jazz, you have to learn how to play music. And then you can express yourself through the language of music that you've learned. Okay? So if we're not teaching people that there is, in fact, a style of music that slaves developed and ex-slaves developed, and that has been added on to, that's all about the subject of freedom, that we are condemning our civilization, our children, to have to relearn this lesson here once again, that education is a worthy thing, and you do not have society without education, and for everybody. And the more educated your society is, the more civilized your society is. And those who make excuses for it are really just, let's say, aiding on the slide downward. And when I look here today in this February of, the spirit of the late 70s, early 80s, and, jazz means freedom, I feel like people are really wanting to express that. But I also feel like our institutions are so much of the government, especially on the local level, has lost that concept here of that their job is to provide service to a civilization, not for the civilization to provide them with a job. So those are all my thoughts here on this February about the shame that we don't have a jazz historian on staff at MPS here. What is the point of paying taxes if you don't? So, all right, that is my radical thought for today. And I'm sure there'll be more, but you have a great day, and thanks for sticking with us. We'll keep you informed. Jazz means freedom. And it's worth discovering. That's the message. Take care.